great to be here, everyone, this morning. I think it's, or wherever it is in the world where you are. So, what I have for you today is just a slightly uh, different workshop to many of the ones I give, but it is also going to be a very open discussion session. And I would like you to share your thoughts and ideas, please, as we go through, because I like to interact with people as well there, and it will really shape what we do. So I will just bring my screen to the forefront, which has a few slides. As I say, this is going to be completely flexible as to what kind of things we look at to do with artificial intelligence, teaching and learning, and student research projects. So my background is very much as somebody who works with students, who teaches. I'm a principal teaching fellow in computer science at Imperial College, London. But I like technology. I like trying out new tools. Some people call me an artificial intelligence expert, which I'm really not, because the real artificial intelligence experts are the people who are doing all the heavy maths and doing all the programming and developing the new systems. But I can use the tools and get them to do things that I find useful. So that's really where I consider my expertise. But don't worry, I cannot use every tool out there or stay up to date with every change, because every time I look at my Twitter feed, then there is something new has been released or something new has been changed. And just even with AI to help me, there are just enough hours in the day to try all of these things out. And my main research field really is academic integrity, students who may or may not be cheating, how we support them, how we avoid that. I've published many papers. These are some of the more recent ones, and many of these published alongside students, undergraduate students as well, for that. And I'm probably best known for working into contract cheating, somebody paying someone else to do their work for them. But nowadays, the challenge we talk about quite a lot is artificial intelligence. Somebody using ChatGPT or another system to do their work for them, which is a challenge completely in its own right. But a big difference is that perhaps we want to support students to using systems like that, because quite frankly, I use them to become more efficient in many cases, but I do try and acknowledge the kind of work I've done. And students will use them when they go into jobs, because that is just the way the world has gone. And I am sure you're here because you're interested. You're not here because you're the kind of person who thinks that this technology is suddenly going to go away, because unless we have a major catastrophe, then I imagine Gen AI is here to stay. So, and I have a active Twitter or X feed at Dr. Lancaster, where I often post the things that I'm trying out. Although today I want to focus particularly on research. So it can be research that we do because we can be more efficient as researchers. I'm sure many of us are practicing researchers as we go through, but it can also be how we support students to be researchers as well. So let's think about areas like projects, dissertations, where they have to work with data. And I'm generally going to stick with relatively simple techniques, because the remaining 45 minutes or so is going to absolutely fly by. Do you think we should be teaching students to use generative AI in different ways, including for research? Is this something we should be doing? Are you really against it? If you've got a reason for your answer, then by all means say that. Yeah. Yes, provided we know something they don't. That is very true, because let's not try and falsely represent our own knowledge or anything like that. I will say, as part of this, that sometimes students can teach us, and I'm assuming most people here are probably here from a staff perspective, but if anybody is here as a student, I know Jess has multiple roles who will be speaking later, including as a student. If anybody is thinking themselves more as a student, then by all means. Yes, students also want to be more effective. I Uh, yeah, does that mean do less work? But yes, I agree with you there. It's beneficial to know about the tools, capabilities, and limitations. Yeah. Yeah, limitations is important because this is definitely not something that is perfect. You may notice I've got a few AI generated images on these slides, and I do still check that this very studious looking chap on the slide has a valid number of fingers and areas like that, because these systems are not perfect. He looks to have, well, at least four. Let's hope there's a thumb hidden away behind that large card he's holding up, but always good. He's got a book in his hand. That's something there. Roman says, yes, we should be teaching ourselves to use it properly too. Yeah, 100% agree. And AI is the future because we need to prepare the students for the future and the high technological world. Well, I'm glad nobody has said no, because you would probably be in a session where you won't enjoy it so much, or you're just staying quiet. But generally, we've got a view about that. Perhaps a better question then, what should we be teaching students? And really interested in your ideas, because this is an interactive share type session where you can share anything you've done as well. And I'm hoping to show you a couple of things, but I'm quite flexible as to what I show you. And I will just give you the proviso that I can try and do live demos. Live demos sometimes work absolutely perfectly. Sometimes they can go horribly wrong, but that is real life uh, as we go through. And this is the thing about generative AI. You won't always get the same answer every single time you try something, because of the way these models work. And you won't, sometimes you may get better answers, sometimes you get different answers, and so on. So, yeah, so anybody used any tools for research themselves or with students for that? Or any ones you know and think would be good to be used? I can tell you there are hundreds of tools out there. There are some very well-known ones. There are some optimized ones, perhaps there. But what kind of tools um, are people interested in, and any that you have used, if any? And it's perfectly fine if nobody has used any for that one. Also, what kind of prompts? Yes, so many of these. So ChatGPT, I will open up in a few minutes, because that is the best known of these tools, and it does have a free version for that. And what prompts to use is definitely a consideration for that. And I'm going to be working English, but many of these tools you work in whatever your preferred language is, because they're quite flexible as well. And we've got some ideas: Semantic Scholar, Elicit, Copilot, ChatGPT. Yeah, we could just bring up this list, and it's ever changing. And often I use ChatGPT as very much a synonym for all these different tools, but there are other alternatives. You've got Google Bard for their alternative. Um, you've got Claude. There's various other ones out there. Research Rabbit, Elicit for literature reviews. Uh, and yeah, teaching students the ethical limitations about what they can do as well. Their literature reviews, very much so for that as well. So getting some brilliant ideas, and I think it's probably, I haven't counted the fingers on these people. I'm slightly less convinced looking at them, but let's have a quick look at one of the fairly recently released tools, which I think is quite useful. Notebook LM. It's quite visible at the moment. So this is a very quietly released system from Google that uses their Gen AI. I think it's got Gemini running in the background. And what we could do here is we could upload an academic research paper, and we could do some analysis with it. We could also upload, or we could also link to Google Docs, because it's a Google device, or Google Slides, or give a website link, give a YouTube video there. And if you want to play around with this in the background, then and upload something, because this is a workshop, then by all means go ahead. But this one to me is quite powerful. I think we'll try with a research paper. And let's make this interactive. Anybody got a research topic that you're particularly interested in? Hopefully something that's relatively understandable so that I don't feel completely stupid, but this is somewhere where we can use this particular tool to help us there. So if anybody's got something in mind, then my plan quite simply is to go to Google Scholar and find a research paper that we can hopefully do a bit of work with using this tool. So let me also bring up a Google Scholar window and just bring that to the foreground as well. So let's see what kind of things we get back. There is this interesting challenge about this session. This is very much about environmental damage and green IT, and using Gen AI tools is counter to that in some cases. So it's about using them efficiently. So let's grab something relatively recent. Let's try this one. Oh, it's Elsevier, probably. Oh, there we go. Now, I think I can just grab this URL and paste it in this link chat rather than having to upload a PDF. So let's add that, and it should add this as a source here at the left. And so this will give us an idea. It will ultimately create a summary for us about what the paper is about. So in this case, a survey of 524 individuals using 3 cognitive models. It will give us some suggested questions. Let's just try one of these. The key factors influencing Malaysians' intention to use renewable energy technology here. And it should generate a bit of text to help us to understand this paper. I didn't even attempt to read it myself, which I would do normally for that. And it will go away and whiz for a minute, and hopefully we are just about visible there. So what are these factors? Attitude towards renewable energy, perceived usefulness of the technology, perceived ease of use, perceived behavioral control, and subjective norms. But one thing which is quite useful is it does give these sources here. So we should be able to trace back that where some of these things have come from without going too far. I think that's a link at the bottom in the references there. And of course we can do useful things like we can save notes. So let me just give this a title, right? Renewable energy there as well. And so we hopefully have a bit more verifiable information because this has come from the paper rather than getting hallucinated or made up information from this model. So there's all kinds of interesting things we could do. We could ask more questions, and by all means, feel free to try this out on one of your own research papers, policy implications. I didn't actually mean to click that, but let's just see what it says as we go through here. And there we go, whirring away. So tailor your campaigns to different groups, promote your practical knowledge, and areas like that. But this is a really interesting part of this deep. You can generate frequently asked questions, study guides, table of contents, timelines, briefing documents. You ask for other things as well, but it's this deep dive conversation. So I will just click that, and that's going to go away in the background. And what this is going to do is it is going to create a podcast style audio discussion about this research paper. And so all our students now who hate to read and look at things online, they could listen to this quite reasonable conversation between 2 people about this area. Now, I think this will take a couple of minutes to generate, so we're not going to quite look at this live, but let's leave this just running in the background. So it's interesting in the chat, is this the kind of thing you feel you could use with students, or you could encourage students to use in any different ways? And you can build up these whole set of notes as well to go with that. And you can also share these in some way afterwards. Well, the mine's a little bit rough and ready, so I'll let you create your own one. But this is perhaps a tool you've seen before, but this is exactly where technology is going. One thing I can't demonstrate live that ChatGPT, the paid version now, you can have a great conversation with it with their advanced voice mode that was released just last week. But that is using a mobile device, and it's very hard to try and share that live to you. This could be Google's best product in terms of uh, its generative AI, but it's been very quietly released, almost in the way in that some of the systems before ChatGPT that I'd use were very quietly released. Now, uh, now whether this audio will come through or not, I don't know. I think I have it set up, but let's have a go.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready to dig into something important.
Always.
Today we're looking at what motivates people to actually use renewable energy, like solar or wind power.
Right.
And to explore that, we're heading over to Malaysia.
Interesting.
Yeah, they've got a fascinating story and some really useful insights for all of us, no matter where we live.
Okay, so what's the energy scene like in Malaysia?
Well, to understand where they are now, we have to rewind a bit. For the longest time, it's been all about fossil fuels.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, oil first, then a big shift to natural gas.
Huh.
It wasn't until, get this, 2001, that renewable energy even showed up in their plans.
Wow. That recent.
Yep. Now, they have made some progress, particularly with solar power, which makes sense, right? Lots of sunshine in Malaysia.
Makes sense. The world is going crazy for solar, right?
All right, it'll be a very boring session if you just had me play that podcast all the way through. But if you are interested, then I've put the link in the chat. But it's pretty good. Yeah, sounds impressive. I mean, the downside is that they're American, or they tend to appear as American, the people in here, but I think there'll be more options added. Apologies to any Americans there. It is just that certain amount of excitement that appears in these things that goes beyond sometimes my level of excitement. But you can try this with different areas here. And it's a very interesting question here in the chat about feeding academic articles to these black boxes. What are they going to do with them? What are the intellectual property requirements, and why are they free for this? Well, this particular, I mean, I chose an open access paper here, so this particular one is always is going to be available anyway. And quite frankly, these open access articles are being mined by the systems that are training these models anyway. So there's nothing there to worry about. But yeah, there is a bit of a concern. I believe this is kept private, but I can't remember the privacy policy of this particular service live without looking it up. So do check this one. I would not be feeding your unpublished papers to it and creating podcasts, but that's just or not be feeding anything that you're concerned about. This, I'm told from reading about it that this has been trained by feeding in thousands of podcasts. So very occasionally you might get, for instance, behind the scenes information. Your jingle might appear, the kind of thing that you get in certain types of podcasts. I don't think you get adverts appearing like you might in some podcasts, but all these things are quite possible. And why are these free? Well, frankly, I believe that these services are trying to build up market share. A lot of them, and OpenAI services, they've got huge amounts of investment. We're talking hundreds of millions, we're probably talking billions there, so they can afford to make things free to try and get people almost addicted to them. But when you start seeing adverts in the results or adverts in things you read that have been copied from these results, then you'll know that this kind of circumstance has changed. Now, the kind of things you might want to look at is how accurate is that information in that audio recording, because this will take information from the paper, but it will also take information from the model that's been used to train it, which just has the normal properties of podcasts as well there. And what can we do about it? But to me, this is quite an exciting, and this is only going to get better. All right, let's step aside from that one. Well, there's another tool that I suspect everybody here has used, and I hope you have, which is ChatGPT. And I'm going to use that just because it's the most best known out of all of these, not because by any means it is the only one, which has been hidden away behind many of my other windows. Think about the kind of things we could do with that. So if anybody has looked at my um, and yeah, the question is, if you upload multiple articles, will this base its responses on this pool of data? Yeah, I believe so. One challenge I know about is as the articles get longer, then it bases the response quite often on the start of the articles there. So if you try to upload a whole book, then you may find it focuses mainly on the introduction or the first couple of chapters, which there are ways around that. For instance, by creating a summary first and then asking it to base its answers on the summary. But if you've seen other tools like chat with a PDF or ask questions to PDF, it does much the same thing. And so the kind of things that we can do, we could upload a PDF and ask it to analyze it. But I quite like looking at sources of data to do some analysis with it. And now, of course, I don't have a great data source handy because I wasn't quite that prepared, but I'm going to just try out this tool here to grab some academic data. This one is published or perished. This essentially does a search of Google Scholar here, but it just grabs the results for us rather than having to me go through and grab a load of results directly from Google Scholar. So I don't know a huge amount of renewable energy stuff, but let's say we want to search for, and we'll keep it short rather than try and be exhaustive, but 50 papers with renewable energy in the title, and we'll just get from 2023 onwards. It's not a perfect research source. This is a freely available tool. It's really useful, and we can see this information that is being scraped here. I'm going to guess sometimes if you ask for too many papers, it's going to start putting up captures. We have to fill in the codes and everything because of how this is simulated. But I'm just going to save this as a CSV file here in, let me save it somewhere where I know where it is without spending too long trying to clean up my folders, because like everyone, I've got loads of poorly thought out folders in the background. So even being a computer scientist, I'm not that good at filing. But I should have this as a CSV file, and you could do this with other data sources. You can do this with your research data you've already got lying around. I just happen to think this is going to fit quite nicely in the next 15 minutes or so to play around with. And let's just check what we've got. So this is the CSV file open in Excel. So we've got number of citations. We should have a list of authors, title of the papers, years, the publishing journal. Sustainability is a popular one in this field. Publisher, we've got links to various things. We've got the Google Scholar links of citations, the data made the query, and various other things. We've got citation metrics. We have scraped abstracts. They're not always perfect, but and so on. But what I want to do, if we move this away, is to ask ChatGPT to process it. Now, let me just think how I'm going to write this prompt. Let's say something. You are an expert quantitative. You're an expert academic researcher working with research paper information on sustainable energy. So the problem with trying to spell, although it will do a pretty good job of working out where I've got it wrong as well here. And attached is a file with paper information. Identify the type of information and clean up the data. So we'll just see what it does. This is not the most sophisticated prompt I've ever written, but let me also upload this file from my downloads directory. And you see it does a nice viewpoint. You can actually do a bit of interactivity. This is a paid version. I believe you can do this with the free version as well. It's just you have a bit more limitations as to how often you can chain, how many queries you can do and everything. But it's done, so it's pretty much worked out the things I said verbally, but written it so much better. Citations, authors, title, and so on, year, source, publisher, etc. And it's trying to do a bit of cleaning up. And you can see their cleaned up version here. So this is, I find this particularly handy where I've done various types of data collection, but sometimes you have missing records. I've used this for, I've done analysis in the past about pricing information in different currencies and tried to work that out as well, and areas like that. But one thing I would, if we had more time, I would get it, well, let's ask it to do this. Let's say, please split the authors across multiple columns. So with one author per column. I probably not phrase that very well, but it should be able to work it out. That's just about good enough. So like this one here, this is where you need to try and zoom in a little bit for you, where it's got two authors. Hopefully we'll do that. And let's just glance across. I'm going to guess it's put them at the end. So yes, you've got author one, author two, etc. here. Right. Okay, so what else could we do with this here? It's actually given me some ideas, which is a relatively recent change. Can you visualize the citation trends per year? That would be very useful because I restricted it to 2023. What are the most cited authors here? I'm actually going to try something else. Sometimes this works, sometimes it didn't. Based on this information, please, for some reason I write please, that's because I'm polite, but apparently you get better results. Please analyze this data in a creative way. Impress me with your insights. Let's just do this and see what it gets for us. And you could give it a bit more direction, give it hypotheses as well. So what's it going to suggest for us here? You can do author collaboration patterns, citation efficiency, so the number of citations per year, which publisher, how does it impact on citations? I am going to note something it's not picked up, that clearly the longer ago this was published, then the more citations you'd expect it to have as well here. Key research themes, geographical focus, and so on here. So it's given us some information, but it hasn't really done the analysis. So let's pick one of these to ask it about there. So let's say complete a keyword analysis for these papers, identify the main themes, use the right code to improve the quality of your analysis. Sometimes it actually be easier to do this on a mobile phone because you can talk to it rather than have to try and type and talk as well for that. And by all means, try this out on your own data in the background and see what you get. You may want to just do a quick double check about these kind of results because it has written some code, which you can see, this is Python code, and it has run this code in the background. So for anyone who's able to work with code, you'll be able to look at this. It's done some quite clever things like work out common stop words to remove like the and as well, and to do various other things as well. And you can see the data set. But we've got areas like, unsurprisingly, energy, renewable sources, technology here, and various other ones. You see, it's imperfect because re is probably not a word that we'd want to use, into, and so on. We give it more direction though to get rid of this. Let's look at another one. Let's say provide an interesting visual representation of this data. It helps to have an idea about things to ask it for. But you could use this with survey data, or your students could use this with survey data. You could do a quick survey in your class anonymously to find out what students think about it, and then do some live analysis and so on. This is just very quickly made this into a graph. Let's just check that 160. Yeah, so it has, just check it. Sometimes you have to check it has got the numbers right, and it hasn't suddenly decided to start going out of a different direction. Of course, you can download this and download the data sets if you want. Show this as a word cloud. You can also ask for word pairs as well, which often gives you better results here. So let's see what we get. And it's chosen to do, I'm going to guess, the top 20 or so terms here. But again, nothing particular surprising. Anyone got any preferences for things you'd like to ask for all our renewable energy experts? Analyze this data statistically and provide an insightful response. Let's see what we get there. So it's going to, yes, we're going to do some citation analysis. If I knew more about this area and was exploring it further, I'm sure I would do something far more interesting, but it can do hypothesis testing as well. And these very boring things, well, not boring things we put in to academic papers. Apparently a mean of 66.42 citations per paper. That seems quite a lot in considering how long ago these were analyzed. Oh, I've got my system sound on, apologies. That's because I was sharing the podcast for that. And so on. Again, it's done a bit of code in the background for this here. Right. Let's just do one more, and then I'll go to the question in the chat. Identify and test a hypothesis relating to this data. So hypothesis, there's no significant difference in number of citations between papers with many authors and papers with few authors. I mean, this can actually be useful if you're trying to work out how to publish for that. I mean, so again, I would want to just double check the accuracy of this here, but we've failed to reject the null hypothesis. There's no statistically significant difference in the number of citations between papers with few authors and those with many authors there. Now, the challenge in the chat, I can see the question, do you see any trade-off between using these tools extensively as a student and knowing what to feed with them? If AI can do the initial assessment and interpretation of text data, how do we teach students how to do the same? So this is going to be one of these challenges that I often talk about in a slightly different way of looking at information like this. And we need students to have foundational skills in order to be able to work usefully with tools like this. So I know how to check if this information is correct here, because I know how to create hypotheses and analyze them. But if the students don't, then they're just going to produce possibly meaningless information, because if anyone's worked with statistics, no, you can show there's a correlation between two things where it really is completely meaningless because yes, it is in the data and that can be purely there by chance. So I think we quite often have to find a way to assess that students can do, they can work with research data without the aid of these systems. And once they can do that, they can work more efficiently with these systems. So I don't think what I'm showing you is particularly advanced or anything like that. There are other tools out there uh, which can automate all these processes still further, quite often though they are paid. But what this does, what does this do is speed things up for people who know what they're doing and know what to ask for. So it's quite, uh, it can be quite tricky to do this. Uh, so I don't necessarily think it's a particularly good hypothesis, but if I was to give us a different hypothesis, then it might do something quite different alongside that. Yeah, what's everyone's thoughts about this? Because it's quite can be quite alarming to people that these kind of things are possible. And uh, were I playing around with this in the background and taking a bit longer with this, I would just try more things out and keep going until I was happy with the results. And you can build up a whole academic paper quite quickly by choosing the right data source and doing the right analysis. You could even get this to write this up for you. I don't think that's particularly ethical, but these kind of things are definitely happening. Were you to go and look on Google Scholar, for instance, or another source of academic research papers, you would find a lot of papers that are very formulaic, and there are these paper factories now that are almost pumping out these things. I mean, if you did want an example of that, let me go back to Google Scholar, which I guess is hidden away under here. If I was to type in there you go. Type in this search term. I've showed this in videos before. There are loads of papers being published which compare ChatGPT results and Google search results. And essentially they ask, can ChatGPT simulate a Google search and does it get the same results? And there are certain names, I'm not going to go through them, but we could actually do this using the publish or perish tool, which is freely available that I showed you before, that will show that you'll see the same author names appearing again and again and again, and they're able to publish these things incredibly quickly. And there are variants in this. So one's comparing ChatGPT with Microsoft Bing. Or I've got an example, which there's a video on my YouTube channel about comparing this with Quora, the question and answer site, and seeing how and showing you how I went through that process. That took me about 5 or 6 hours to create a research paper, knowing a bit about the area and knowing enough about to work efficiently with it. I have not done this search for a bit. It surprises me there's one here published in Nature, so maybe this one is a real one that's been done quite properly. But there are some quite dodgy ones if you were to look through this in great detail, which are incredibly formulaic. So what else can you do with this type of technology? I don't think we should start another demo, but this can also do a reasonable job about if you were to feed it textual information, qualitative information, interview transcripts. If you trust these tools with that information here, or I've shown this in the past with Reddit posts where they're freely available, and identifying themes within them. So go away and identify these themes, then classify the posts against these themes there. And again, you can get some insights from that, identify relevant quotes. I guess I've never tried this. You could even feed this back into Notebook LM at the end of this process here. But these are some of the things you could do. Yeah, so we've looked a bit at some of these ideas here. And I've written a bit about this, but really, I want to leave our last few minutes to go over to you for any thoughts and any questions. And just to leave this as a discussion, but I do encourage you to just spend a bit of time playing around with these tools and see what's possible. Because even if you're not planning to use them in teaching, you want to know what students can do here, and to think about whether this is something they're doing ethically with integrity or something they're doing that is perhaps less desirable there. So anyone shocked or surprised? Any questions or ideas there? Anything you want to talk about? Anyone got any ideas as a result of this discussion and things you'd not thought about before? There we go. Here we go. Get some questions in. So, what is the best practice of ensuring transparency and replicability of students' research? Now, a really interesting thing about using these tools is that I can ask the same prompt several times with the same data set and get different results, particularly for areas like thematic analysis. And this is a bit of a challenge. Uh, it's exactly the same challenge as if I were to do this analysis, hand over the same data set to someone else, and ask it to identify themes, and we would not get the same results. And then you always have this bit of cross-checking between people who are coding things up in different ways and seeing things. I think depending on the depth of the research and how much this is intended for external sharing and publication, as opposed to just a quick example, then I really think you need to almost treat ChatGPT or a tool as a new human researcher who isn't the most advanced in the field, and to do much the same process, to do a certain amount of, let's say, thematic analysis yourself, and then to ask the tool to do the rest, and then to cross-check the results and see if you're happy with it. And if you're not, ask it to do it again. That's a good thing about the fact that it will take minutes or seconds to do this. You can ask it to do it as many times as you like until you feel the data is valid. I would also put a some kind of disclaimer or acknowledgements is not quite the right word, but to mention that generative AI had been used to support this analysis process as well in any paper or anything like that, to show that. But these tools are only getting better. Uh, if you have an understanding of things like machine learning, if you're a computer scientist, or even if you're not, because it's in other fields, then you can develop simple machine learning models as well using these tools for that. And machine learning is not always that replicable either, for many reasons, because it's very much a bit of a black box for that. But I would also say that they ask the students to make data sets available and to be able to show what they did. There's no reason why the data can't be neatly formatted in a nice spreadsheet format or something like that afterwards, especially because the tools will do so much of this for you. But the same problems occur as with any other type of research. I've certainly worked with student partners who've been doing this all by hand, and I would not have coded things up in the same way they did, but this just shows the differences here. And yeah, understandably, that there is a question, it has been answered a bit in the chat, about languages and can you use languages other than English? Most tools can use Czech and common languages. They're slightly different ways they work. Sometimes they work natively in these languages. Now, I don't have enough knowledge of every language to be able to say which tools work natively in a language. Sometimes they translate things to English, do the analysis, then translate it back to the preferred language. So there's different ways of working. It's yeah, I think there have been some studies that saying you get slightly different results depending how that works, but essentially that is the process. Lucas says, any advice on how to identify what student presentations have been produced using these tools apart from the language being used? So this is going this is going slightly beyond the pure research field here, but I think it's difficult the kind of indicators I would look for, because you can generate slides using these tools, although we've not got time to cover that. You can generate bullet points for slides and everything like that. I do think there are language clues where the language is too sophisticated for the student, but if you know what you're doing, you can either create that yourself or you can ask for changes there as well. One thing that always stands out to me in presentations is when there's a script used, when people are doing a lot of reading and they can't deviate from the script. And sometimes that scripted language is more revealing than the content of the slides. I think in presentations, there is always a need to ask the students some questions about the work they've done, just to check, can they provide unprepared answers for that? Or perhaps to ask for some detail about particular things that are on the slides, particular research analysis, or the process used for that as well. So there are all kinds of the things there. And we've got a hopefully an audio question, so please do go ahead.
Thank you very much for what you presented. I just want to share insights that we were working on here. I work at the Estonian University of Life Sciences, and we were thinking about the integration of generative AI. But there's one thing that we need to consider when integrating it about the institutional levels. So there maybe can be like one general framework for the overall institution, like university, and then on the departments or the chairs can be like another one. And this is something we were working on last year because we are like life science university, but it's like landscape architecture, I would share. So we have like more artistic demands or requirements. So this is one point I wanted to point out. And actually, there's one thing also we can maybe highlight. It's about the presumption of innocence when we deal with students and how they work with, for example, tools like ChatGPT. We need like to give them the freedom, and we should not assume as teachers, we should not assume that they tend like or they want to cheat or to make it easy in a way that they don't want to learn. So this is one presumption that we can add. And following on what you were mentioning, that a tool like ChatGPT should be like conveyed to the students that it's like an assistant, it's not supervisor, and it should not replace the role of the supervisor in any phase. So this is something that needs to be always in the minds of both the tutors and students when they deal with ChatGPT, especially with ChatGPT. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think those are all really brilliant points, and my focus has been about ideas for research here. Even though my main research field is academic integrity, then my aim in all of this is not to try and catch people cheating or anything like that, because if that happens, something has gone wrong, and I always think the best of students here. But this presentation, particularly thinking about ways to use this technology in what I hope is a positive way and setting up students for the future, even though things can go wrong if this is done without the agreement of professors for this. But I'm very positive about this, and I completely agree that think about this technology as a as a relatively inexperienced research assistant, or some people even talk about this as a PA, and get students to think of not as a qualified person. So if you know how to direct the technology, or you know how to direct your PA, you may get some very good results. But if you don't, then the results are going to be questionable. They may be wrong. They may not be that useful. And that's a really important discussion to have surrounding critical appraisal and being able to work with information. So I think that's a brilliant point to end on. I'm going to bring the session to a close because I know that there are many other exciting workshops and discussions today, but I will there's not a great deal on the slides because most of what we did was a demo, but I will add some resource links to the slides about things I've shown. and talked about as well, so those can be shared afterwards. But I hope this gives you some ideas. Do play around with the tools and do enjoy the rest of this exciting event today. So thanks, everyone.